And we'll move on, Paul, and talk about Tottenham Hotspur, actually, because it sounds like the club are potentially being linked with Jonathan David, another top number 9. Can you sort of confirm for us, please, if that deal could be going ahead? And is the feeling that Spurs' priority transfer for this summer is going to be that number 9?
Well, it's looking that way. They're obviously looking for that 9. They're linked with a lot, aren't they? They're linked to the boy from Seville. They're linked to Jonathan David. They've been linked with Ivan Toney, although all the links with Ivan Toney has gone quiet. I think it's important, regardless of who it is, that it's a player that fits Ange's system, the way that he wants to play, with the high press. Richarlison been given the opportunity to do that. I thought he would have fitted into that system well, the way that Ange wanted to play, because of the high press, the intensity. It's not just a case of identifying a number 9. It's a case of identifying a number 9 playing in the way that the manager wants. I mean, recruitment at Tottenham in the last 12, 18 months has been excellent. We talked about it before on this pod, with the Paratici impact. He's got his fingerprints all over the signings. You look at Bentancur, you look at Van der Ven, you look at Kulusevski, you look at Vicario, the goalkeeper. Not necessarily household names that people who watch the Premiership would have known of until these players came into the Premier League. And the recruitment at Tottenham has been excellent. So a combination of the manager's wants and needs with the expertise and the team that bring the players in, you would expect them to get the right number 9. Since Harry Kane's been there, they've always looked for somebody to play when Harry Kane wasn't playing, and they never managed to do that. And when Harry Kane's left, they thought that they were going to give Richarlison an opportunity there this season. Son's actually played there, done really, really well this year, carried the can with the goals. I personally think he's better and more effective coming off the wide when he's running at defenders, playing down the left-hand side, cutting in. So it would seem, I mean, the links don't go away, whether it's David, whether it's Ivan Toney. The number 9 position for Tottenham does seem like a priority. But again, I'll state, Tottenham don't just go out there and throw big transfer fees about. So it will be, I suspect it will be a player that's very, very cleverly recruited, a bit like the ones that have touched on there that we spoke about. I think the last big fee they paid was 50, 60 for Richarlison, wasn't it? And obviously Dembele was 62, 65. That's losses that they're going to have to cut. He's been on loan at Turkey, in Turkey all this year. He's a huge loss for financially. They're going to have to cut the losses, transfer fee and wages. So hopefully if he moves on, wages will create space in the squad. And number 9, it is seemingly more and more likely that one is going to come in before the start of the season.
And Daniel, to kind of pick up on that, we know that Son is out of contract next season. Are we expecting him to sign an extension at the club, or could he potentially leave as a free agent next summer? What's the current feeling in the market?
Well, Tottenham have the option to trigger a 1-year extension on his contract, and I expect that to happen. I would be incredibly surprised if Tottenham don't take that option. They were also able to keep Harry Kane tied down to the point where they could get that big transfer fee for him last summer, despite the fact he'd made his intentions pretty clear even a couple of years before that he wanted to leave. I would be amazed if they didn't trigger the extension, or if they did and then let his contract run down. But I can see Son having a similar sort of feeling to how Harry Kane did at the end, where the lack of competition for trophies is eventually going to make him think that he wants to move on and try and take that opportunity, because he's Paul mentioned how good he was last season playing in that role up top. He was absolutely fantastic, despite it not being his sort of natural position. But ultimately, Son is going to look at the situation going into this season. Are they going to compete for trophies? I don't think we know. They're probably not going to compete for the league title. But are they going to be able to make that push? It's hard to tell right now. So his future's definitely up in the air. The longer Tottenham can keep him, the better, obviously, because one, the fans adore him, and rightly so. He's been an incredible servant and played such a big part in their team over the last few years. But the challenge is can Ange Postecoglou, can Daniel Levy and co convince him that Tottenham's the place to be if he wants to win something at club level? And I think that's going to be a very, very difficult thing to do. But I'd expect him to trigger that contract extension, at least have him at the club until 2026 and take on from there. If we know Daniel Levy, as I think I sort of know how he works, even from an outsider's point of view, if there's an opportunity to cash in maybe next summer, then I think you'll probably take that.
Talking of exits, Daniel, picking up on that, it looks like Emerson Royale has been linked with a move away this summer, potentially a £20 million price tag. Are we expecting him to leave the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium this summer? And then would we potentially see a replacement to come in for him?
Yeah, well, I think in January it was reported that offer was rejected from Al Nassr in the Saudi Pro League. Probably just I imagine like at that time, that's when Tottenham were really struggling with those defensive injuries. So it was absolutely essential that he stayed at the club. I think now going into next season with Romero, Van de Ven, Doggy all fully fit, I think they're definitely capable of setting a good level replacement for Emerson Royal. So I can see him leave. I think he's been one of those players that's had good and bad times in a Tottenham shirt, hasn't he? He's put in some good performances, but he's also had some absolute shockers. He's one of those players that the fans, from what I can tell, just can't seem to really get on board with. And sometimes that happens. So I think it's one of those things where both parties, it would suit them for him to move on. I think Ange Postecoglou is one of those managers is when he trusts a player who really trusts him. I don't think he has that with Emerson Royal. I think he stayed out of necessity purely because he didn't really have an option, especially with those that sort of decimation of his defence during the midpoint of last season. But I think now, barring any new injuries, I think the opportunity for him to move on will be there, and I think £20 million is probably a reasonable amount of money to bring in, and hopefully try and reinvest that in a good level replacement, or maybe even put the money towards signing that number 9 that they so desperately need.
And Paul, another name that's been touted that actually you mentioned earlier on in the podcast was Eberechi Eze. Sounds like the club have inquired for him potentially. What's his value in today's market? And do you think, aside potentially in number 9, is that sort of attacking number 10, similar to James Maddison, is that a position you'd like to see signed this summer?
I don't think it's the necessity. I think he would be a luxury. I think he would be a great signing for the club, but I don't think Tottenham will be on their own. He's obviously gaining a lot of admiring glances from all over Europe. Listen, I think Tottenham will be priced out of it, in all honesty. I think they'll be at the table. I think they'll be playing. They'll be interested in signing the player. But when it comes down to the actual final figure, I think it'll be too much for Tottenham. I mean, you look at what they paid for Dembele, 60+ million. Eze's not going to come cheap. You're in that bracket, aren't you? You're 56 million, 50, 60 million for a young English talent of that quality. Then Tottenham are going to be there. Of course, they're going to be interested. You look at the other players that they're linked with. Morgan Gibbs-White, that's a name that doesn't go away. Conor Gallagher's still a name that doesn't go away. So with all these leaks and the drips that keep coming from that type of position, that's obviously a position that they are looking at. There's no smoke without fire, generally. I mean, we love to speculate and we love to talk about players potentially moving, or we've heard this and we've heard that. But actually, when a club's linked with 4 or 5 different players of a similar ilk in a similar position, there's got to be some truth in it. I can't see Tottenham paying over the odds for Eze, which I think they'd probably have to do at this stage of his career, at this stage of the season. With him, Elise, Eze, Palace looks like a different team towards the end of the season. So although Palace, I think, will trade, I can't see them being overly keen to trade, and they'll hold out for a price they want, which I think will price Tottenham out of it.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.